Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Wayne Bradley Show this morning. Thanks for listening in. We've got a great show on the air today. We're going to have gun rights activist and gun instructor Rick Ector on the show. We're going to bring him on the show right now. Rick, welcome to the show.
Hey, Wayne, thank you for having me on the show. As always, it's a pleasure to be on. Follow your broadcast regularly, and, man, I must be impressed in the, seems like the relatively short period of time you've been on, man. You caught on like wildfire, and everyone's paying attention and everyone's listening, and I look at all the big shots, pun intended, that you've had on the show, man. It just makes it that much more of a privilege for me to be on.
Well, I'll let you know you've had one of the most listened to shows, period, on the air, so thank you. It's a pleasure to have you on, and you also have a large legion of people that listen to you because, like I said, one of your shows has been one of the most listened to and most reviewed shows we've ever had, so thank you for coming back on the show. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. First of all, I want the people listening in today to know a little bit more about Rick and his classes and what he does here in the Detroit area. Rick, tell them a little bit more about your instructing classes.
Yes, I am a credentialed firearms trainer based out of Detroit, Michigan. I provide a service by which individuals who so desire to take on a more active role in their personal protection, they can do so most ostensibly by taking a concealed pistol license training class, getting their concealed pistol license, which will enable them to carry a concealed firearm on or about their person for self-defense. Very huge on personal protection, especially now during the current environment in which we're operating in. Nationally and across the state, in the aggregate, crime is down, but we still have some communities in which crime is still a persistent issue, particularly here in the city of Detroit, and I want to give individuals who have a desire to be more active in their safety to have a means of doing so.
Okay. How long have you been teaching this class, Rick?
I've been teaching this class 6 years now. 6 years, 6 years enrolling. I got started about 7 years ago. I got started on this path when I was robbed in my own driveway over on the north side of Detroit in one of the so-called nice areas. Just goes to show you anywhere you think that you're safe, you're not absolutely certain bad things can happen. It was a wake-up call. I decided to be more active in my safety. I got the license. I got trained. I got more training, and I wanted to give back and share with other people, other residents, other members of my community, the responsibility that goes along with being more proactive in your safety of yourself and of your person.
Okay. Now, for some people that who are not familiar with Detroit, they think that all of Detroit is bad. But like you said, you got caught up in the area that we consider the good part of town. What are some of the things I wanted to talk about was like safety, because you said it happened on a nice part of town in your driveway or something. What are some safety tips for people that are listening? What would be some safety tips, obviously with the holidays coming around? Can you give people who are listening maybe some good ideas on, being aware of your surroundings and staying, protecting yourself?
Well, definitely, Wayne. Awareness would be the key strategy, the key tactic that someone should employ while they're trying to be safe when they're outside of their home. Given the nature of crime today, you can be in your home and someone just come right on in during a home invasion. But in general, awareness is the number one thing that individuals can do to make themselves more safe. The way I teach it in the class, there are 5 levels of awareness. There's unaware, aware, alert, and alarm. Unaware is a state that a lot of people are in. Their head is in the clouds. They're not paying attention. They're on their cell phones. They're updating their social media statuses. They're checking in at Foursquare. They might be at a gas station where there's a TV screen and they're watching the sports highlights and the weather forecast, and they're really not paying attention as to who is there that is a potential threat, who is testing their boundaries and is looking for an opportunity to attack. So, for sure, awareness, and particularly in the most dangerous areas, not only in the city but across the state and across the country, would be parking lots and gas stations. Those are high traffic areas, a lot of people coming and going, a lot of opportunities for individuals to violate personal space and actually close the distance between themselves and their would-be victim. You know, distance is your friend. No one can rob you from the curb. Crime is a very personal and up-close affair, and if an individual can get close to you, you know, by any means of tactics, asking you a bunch of questions while steadily coming towards you, you know, hey, do you know what time it is? Where is the bus stop? Or do you know, who won the game, or what's the score, or what the lottery number was, and that type of thing. You know, other things that just people can do, man, is, hands. You see someone, they're approaching you, what's going on with their hands? Can you see them? Are they hidden? Are they in their jacket? Are they behind their back? You know, a lot of people talk about eyes being the windows to the soul, man, but hands kill. You want to make sure that you can see someone's hands. If you can't, you know, you want to increase the distance, and you want to get away, and you want to make sure that they don't have an opportunity to pose a threat to you. You know, a lot of other things that I talk about is in terms of your behaviors. Are you doing things? Are you engaging in risky activities? Are you doing things on the internet that may pose you at a greater risk? Are you broadcasting your whereabouts, where you're going, where you're going to be? Are you meeting people for the first time at a private residence as opposed to out in, public at a very public venue? Are you conducting business, buying things off Craigslist and parking lots? Just use some common sense there with regards to, internet safety, and just don't do things that could be risky. We're talking about things after dark. Do you really need to go to the ATM machine after dark? Do you really need to park in a dark, isolated area? Do you really need to go to the car wash after dark? Do you really need to go to the Coney Island at 3 o'clock in the morning? I mean, there are whole
now that's something I was going to ask you, Rick. Now, as the instructor, someone that's obviously knows how to defend yourself. Do you do any of that kind of stuff? Now, I've heard other people say they don't even. That's avoidance. Do you go to let's say a Coney Island at 3 in the morning, or do you try to avoid that yourself?
Well, I personally do not. I mean, here's the thing. My personal strategy is to adopt the concept of avoidance at all times. If I can avoid a situation where I might be at greater risk, I'd rather do that than be subject to the whims or the capricious attitudes of some of these predators out on the street. And if there's for example, if there's a gas station, man, and there's a lot of people milling about and loitering, I could take the standpoint that, hey, I got a gun, I can defend myself, but I don't. I say, look, there's a bunch of people loitering, it looks kind of chancy, kind of dicey. I just won't go to that particular gas station. If it's in terms of things that I can do during the daytime, buy gas, and fill up the car during the daytime, go to the bank and the ATM during the daytime. Avoid the Coney Island at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Probably better off just going to bed and waking up and having a decent breakfast. Because here's the thing. The major thing is if something happens and you're forced to defend yourself, you're going to be disrupted. There's going to be, an inquiry into the legality of your actions. You may be sequestered, taken away, questioned. You may have to miss a day or two of work. Individuals getting involved and talking and investigating. It wouldn't just be better to just avoid that whole situation just by not participating. And that's pretty much my position, man. If I can avoid a situation that could rapidly deteriorate into something that I need to defend myself, it'd be so much better if I just avoided the incident, defending myself, having to get my attorney involved and having to be investigated. Just avoid it altogether. Best policy is avoidance.
Now, for all the holiday, obviously the holiday shoppers around, if you're out at malls and things of that nature, What are your suggestions for these people? Like I said, big bags, a lot of stuff. People know you might be holding on to money. What do you suggest for the holiday shoppers out there, Rick?
Well, you know what? It's an excellent question because, it is the holiday shopping season. We're out shopping for our loved ones, buying gifts, presents, and the predators, the robbers, the jackets, they're out there basically shopping the shoppers. The awareness piece I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that is key. You want to try to get your shopping done during the daytime. You want to minimize all of the huge packages that you're carrying to your car. If possible, get an escort from the location where you're shopping to walk you to your car. You want to make sure that you get in and get out of that car as quickly as possible. And if you engage in that practice of combat parking, where you park your vehicle in a parking spot so that you can pull straight out, as opposed to having to back out when you're trying to make your exit. You're most vulnerable when you're stationary and right before you get out of the car and right before you get into the car. That's when you're going to be most vulnerable when you're out shopping. And, of course, if you're out there and you got on a lot of expensive fashion, glasses, eyewear, jewelry, rings, things of that nature, fancy purses, these guys are going to look at you as a quick, easy target, somebody to quickly assault and run off with. So, personally, I'm not speaking against it, man, but if you really need to have on a pair of $1,700 designer eyewear, fancy frames, do you really need that? Do you really need the fancy bags, the $400-500 purses? Do you really need to do that when you're out there doing your holiday shopping? That's just a few things that I would recommend to individuals out there during the holidays.
Oh, okay. Now, Rick, have you been following the presidential race at all?
Yeah, I've been following it. Both. It's had its light moments for sure. I've been following the Herman Cain saga. I mean, I'm fairly political, but I'm of the opinion that if you're not very political and very up to date into things that are going on, you would have to stop and take a look at what was happening there. I'm looking at, the candidates. It's a real interesting race, particularly on the Republican side. But we'll see what happens.
As a gun rights activist, which candidate do you look at to be the most pro Second Amendment, pro guns? Who do you like at this point?
If you were talking about pro gun amongst all the candidates, whether we're talking, well, it definitely would have to be on the conservative side. But when you look at all the candidates, and it's a guy that I know you're not big on, and as a matter of fact, you may have had a few posts where you said some things that weren't so flattering about this guy, but Ron Paul is definitely the most pro-gun person, I believe, on the Republican side.
Okay, all right. Well, as far as the frequency go, Ron Paul might be your guy. And that's fine. I've talked a little bit about Ron Paul as of lately, but to be honest, that selection does not surprise me. As far as those issues are concerned, I believe Ron Paul is a good candidate. It's just obviously his foreign policy is probably where I have my biggest issue with Ron Paul. But did you hear anything about this ruling now where they're going to allow you to detain American citizens for if you're under the guise of terrorist activity? I mean, it was a very vague description, but right now they're fighting to protect our rights. What do you think about something like when you hear things like that? Is that something you think that gets people stoked up, especially there's some of these gun rights activists that believe the government is coming for them anyway? Do you think those kind of laws really make people more paranoid about that kind of scenario?
Personally, I do think that when we talk about legislation, along these lines, that it is something to be extremely concerned about. This whole idea about indefinite detainment of citizens for suspected activities. That would be all great and dandy if we could, I guess, use lack of a better word, actually trust individuals who are elected to serve on our behalf, man. But when you look at some of the things that have come out of the government, some of the things that they've said in the past, things such as, well, if this is an individual who is active online and if he owns a firearm or two, he's a potential domestic terrorist, these types of things. We still haven't even worked out how to get people off this no-fly list, man. Legislation like this is just scary, and we need to just beat it back. I tell people all the time, aren't you tired of being scared yet? This imaginary boogeyman that we need to have to scare us out of our rights. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't this some legislation that was put out by our very own Michigan Senator Carl Levin?
Yeah, he's part of that legislation, and like I said, it gives them the right to detain American citizens as long as they see fit. If they put you under the guise of being a domestic terrorist, so. And I keep seeing people post about that. Justin Amash, who's our Michigan congressman, he voted against it. He's very much a constitutionalist, and that's his biggest issue is that this could, if you're an American and they that you've done something with that goes into under terrorism, they can lock you up and not let you out.
And it's chilling, and definitely goes against at least a few constitutional concepts that I'm familiar with. It's bad news. Anybody who is, it's bad news, and it should not be adopted. I mean, any particular governmental administration takes issue with for whatever reason because of their political opinions or some activities that they don't approve of but are lawful, could find themselves on these lists and could find literally black helicopters flying overhead and be illegally taken away in the middle of the night under cover of darkness and shoved in some cell somewhere without the benefit of a hearing. That's especially chilling.
Okay. Now, did you hear about the federal law that they were trying to pass that would have given where it was going to allow you to carry your firearm throughout the country, basically making it a federal law? If you're good in one state, you might be good in all the others. Do you think that's something we need, or do you keep it the current way where each state has the gun rights of their own?
Well, I'm a huge pro-gun guy, man, and you know what? I'm very big on the Second Amendment. A national right to carry, law, it would definitely be a good thing. Some of the reasons why we shouldn't have it are voiced by a few people, in the states where they don't even allow their own citizens to have guns. They want to push this issue of states' rights. Well, hey, we don't let our own people carry guns. Why should we let your people carry guns? I think the bigger issue is that your right to keep and bear a firearm should not end because you happen to reach the wrong state line. Those states that do not allow any form of carrying, whether it's open or concealed, we really need to spend time and getting those situations squared up locally. But, sometimes when, you got a few states that don't want to act right, that don't want to recognize some basic fundamentally recognized rights, sometimes we got to do things to get them in line with the rest of the states. There was an opportunity a few years ago under a spending bill called the Thune Amendment that came up, and it came to a vote, and I think we only needed a few votes. I think we came up like 2 votes short, and both of our senators here from the state of Michigan voted against that Thune Amendment, which would have included this national right to carry law. It was Stabenow and Levin. So, we talk about gun rights, man, and at the local level where we're talking about the state level, I mean, we as citizens, man, got to pay attention to our elected representatives and look at how they're voting on the issues that are important to us, particularly gun rights. Just from just following, this national right to carry thing, I know that Levin and Stabenow have poor records on gun ownership and gun rights. Okay. We need to go in another direction with those guys.
Well, hopefully in 2012 we'll have a solid GOP candidate to take on Debbie Stabenow, and maybe we can get her out of there because her voting record in general is atrocious. What about now? This is something I know you're heavy on gun rights. How important is it for you to know your own rights? Because like in Detroit, I've been hearing a lot of cases of where they're taking advantage of people who don't know their actual gun rights.
You know, I'm hearing a lot of things that are disturbing. You know, a lot of this is anecdotal. No one is, you know, necessarily filed an official complaint about it. I'll get involved because they'll see me on social media and they say, "Hey, man, this happened to me. You know, what do you think?" You know, and then I'll explain to them that, you know what, there's definitely an issue here if the way you reported the issue, you know, actually happened. You know, basically, to answer your question straight up, if you don't know your rights, really you don't have any. And in a lot of cases, I'm hearing certain individuals are coming into contact with local law enforcement officials who either don't know some of the local laws on the state level as it relates to firearms, or they choose not to follow the law. I'm hearing about individuals who may have had their firearms taken from them, and then individuals are following up on their firearms and trying to get them back, and they can't locate them. They're being lost. You know, individuals who are being harassed because they're open carrying, and we all know that open carry, as long as you follow all the stipulations in the state of Michigan, is completely legal. It's just going to come down to a lot of us knowing our rights inside and out with respect to the gun laws, and really holding our local government officials accountable. If it's in the city of Detroit, let's talk about addressing these issues towards city council, to the mayor's office, to the Board of Police Commission. In terms of our election responsibilities, we need to get out and vote for pro-gun candidates. There was a candidate here in Detroit at the last election. She waited until the day after the election to say how anti-gun she was. You know, some of these things are just a slap in the face.
Who is that? Who are we talking about here?
Councilwoman Santil Jenkins. She's you know, she had a personal tragedy in a family where a close relation died because they were shot and killed. And, you know, I definitely, you know, I can have sympathy for, you know, losing a loved one, but the bigger issue is that's the individual that committed the crime, not the actual gun, to hold the gun and inanimate object accountable. But, you know, the bigger thing, man, with gun rights here in the state, you know, when you look at it across the state, on the state level, Michigan is rapidly becoming the gold standard with regards to gun rights with respect to a lot of things that we got going on positive for us. As of right now, there are 39 other states that recognize the state of Michigan concealed pistol license. So we can visit 39 other states with our firearms concealed. You know, rules may differ from our home state here relative to the state we're going to. You know, things such as pistol-free zones, where they exist, whether you have a duty to retreat or not, castle doctrine and all of that. But, yeah, 39 other states, man. It's the most recognized carry license in the country. We do have the castle doctrine, you know, with a few exceptions. Okay. If someone is in the process of breaking into your home or has already broken into your home, it is presumed as a matter of law that person presents a threat of great bodily harm, sexual assault, or death, which would enable us to use lethal force to defend ourselves, our home, and our family. Of course, open carry is legal here in the state of Michigan. And there's a few other, you know, things that are pending, things that have been brought up at the state legislature, and we're hoping to see if those things go our way. You know, right now at the state level, we got the House, we got the Senate, and, you know, we got a governor. So anything that we feel that we should explore getting, I think this is a great opportunity to do that, as long as we don't overreach. And I think some of the things that we're talking about are a step in the right direction. The last thing I heard us talk about was making it legal for citizens to have access to tasers if they have a concealed pistol license. Okay. You know, I'm not a huge fan of tasers personally. I like firearms over tasers, but if making it legal for a person who has a concealed pistol license, if that will enable them to carry something to protect themselves and their family, you know, I'm all for it. You know, there's some legislation that's out there now that's being debated about allowing individuals to apply for a concealed pistol license at any county clerk's office.
Because
the original intent of that law was to move all of this county processing of a concealed pistol license for a state license to the state level.
Okay.
And you know what? I really like the original premise of that bill, the way it was originally put in and submitted. But over time, it has morphed into letting individuals apply at any particular clerk's office because of some clerk's offices are more, they expedite the processing of the applications faster and better than a lot of others. I really, I'll take the legislation as it is right now, that if it's approved, that it's enacted, that we can apply in any county. But I would much rather have having all of this stuff done, the concealed pistol license processing at the state level the same way that we do a driver's license. Another thing I think that we need to look at, another two things, right to carry at work.
Okay.
We had that incident in the state, towards the west side, where an individual who was a pharmacist at a commercial pharmacy, an individual came in and announced a robbery, and this clerk defended himself, and because of that, he was fired. I think that we need to take a look at worker safety. If an individual, as an employer, decides that he wants to disarm employee as a condition of working there, I think that we need to start holding these employers fully accountable for the safety of their workers while they're on the job. And let's even take a look at on their travel to job and on their travel home, from work. Because if you're going to disarm an employee, you're going to disarm them pretty much for the whole day, to work, at work, and from home work. Let's look at holding these guys accountable, or just say, hey, these people have jumped through all the hoops. They've met all the requirements. Let them carry their concealed firearm at work. And the other thing that I'm looking for us to do a push on is the elimination of the so-called pistol-free zone. Anytime you look at places where, crime is going to happen, it's going to happen in these criminal empowerment zones where the only people that are going to have guns are the criminally ill or just people who are just bad guys. It's only the law-abiding citizens who are going to obey these signs and not go there, and, of course, the only people with guns are going to be criminals, and it's going to be a free-for-all. But, just to quickly, recap, man, Michigan, we're headed in the right direction on gun rights, and we got a few other things that we need to get. And once we get those, the elimination of the pistol-free zones, let's talk about right to carry at work, being able to apply at any clerk's office or just outright moving that process into the state's office, letting law-abiding citizens with CPLs have tasers, we'll definitely be in the right direction, and we will be, the gold standard for gun rights if we can get these things done.
What do you think about the Attorney General's decision to allow people to purchase silencers? What do you think the benefits of that are, and what could be some of the negatives about allowing people to purchase silencers?
Well, I think the way I recalled it, it was more or less a restatement of an opinion as to whether it was legal or not. Based on, what I've heard, it had already been legal. There was nothing cut and dried to say that it wasn't, but it was a restatement, an opinion that he felt that it was legal. I'm all for it. The principal reason being is that if you live in a community in which, you can shoot on your property, you don't want to necessarily cause a disruption to your community. There's no reason why you should not be able to suppress the sound if you're especially engaged in a lawful activity. The big thing that a lot of people, they get caught up in, they think that just anybody can have one. You got to jump through all the hoops and get all the necessary approvals from the government, to do this type of thing. So, a lot of times when we talk about things for people to do with respect to gun rights, a lot of anti-gun people are quick to label, people as criminals or would-be criminals. We're not talking about criminals. We're talking about law-abiding citizens individuals who have not had their rights taken away from them with respect to the ownership and purchasing of these things. So law-abiding citizens, fine, go for it. And, of course, bad guys, criminals, and those that are mentally ill, that would be a bad move. So, yeah, I'm in support of Bill Schuete's opinion with respect to silencers.
Now, for people who have, can you give some clarification, because I've always kind of wondered about this. If you want to apply for a license and you've had some kind of, some kind of criminal record, what would exclude you from being able to apply for a CCW license if you have some sort of record?
Well, I mean, at the most extreme case, you would have someone who has either a felony conviction of any kind or a misdemeanor domestic violence conviction. Those two convictions are like the extreme. If you have one of those, you are barred from owning or possessing a firearm until, either those issues can be expunged if possible. Sometimes they can't be because to get an expungement, you have to have only one conviction whatsoever for an offense for which you could not have received a life sentence. It has to be at least 5 years old. You have had to meet all the requirements, that is in terms of restitution, community service, made all your reports, and make a convincing application, to the particular court if it's approved. Of course, then we got some 8-year exclusions and some 3-year exclusions. These are, some offenses that, aren't as serious as a felony or as a misdemeanor domestic violence. But say, for example, you caught a driving while license suspended 2 times, or you happen to be an individual who was operating a locomotive or an aircraft or a ship while intoxicated, or you caught a drunk driving. You got a second conviction for drunk driving. Those are things that would exclude you for 8 years.
Okay.
Things would follow under the 3-year thing would be, something a little more minor than the 8-year offenses. Something like driving while under the influence, first offense, which would be a 3-year exclusion. But for the most part, there are some things, in the statute with regards to CPL eligibility, I think that are good things. I think if what the intent is that if you had, some serious issues with alcohol, with drugs, or some type of assaultive behavior, then basically what the state is saying, maybe there's some issues that exist there that maybe you shouldn't have one at this time.
Right.
And, for the most part, I can go along with that. There are some things in the statute, man, I think that are, I'm not going to say that they're minor, I just don't think that they're relevant.
What's some good examples of something like that?
Well, I mean, driving while license suspended. It's important to make sure that you have a driver's license, especially if you're going to be driving. But what does that have to do with having a gun,
Right. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about your class and get some kind of like some of the details about that. You said you've been, how long again, 6 years?
I've been teaching like 6 years now. I've been doing them every other week, roughly. They've been well received. One thing that I do that a lot of other people don't do, I contract out with an attorney to come in and actually do the legal section of the class. I feel that's the most important part of the class, and I want to make sure that I provide the absolute best training in that area. There are some people out there that, they are just satisfied with taking the class and just having someone read the law to them, as
right.
in the statute. That's one solution. I think a better solution would be to actually explain it in very clear and uncertain terms, to actually bring out some actual court cases and actually explain to you why the rulings went the way that they did, and also to be able to answer some questions that pertain to you as an individual or some situations you may have heard of. And, of course, there are some classes that are being taught by law enforcement. Right. I'm not anti-law enforcement. I just think that it's a conflict of interest for someone in law enforcement to be teaching civilians what their rights are with respect to the aftermath of a violent encounter. Law enforcement typically is going to ask certain individuals to sacrifice certain protections that they have. For one, the right to remain silent, and the right to have counsel, and the right against unreasonable searches and seizures. These are some things, I hate to say it, be the bearer of bad news. Law enforcement, their number one objective is not to protect the rights of the accused, the rights of the homeowner who had his door kicked in, or the woman who came home after work and someone jumped out of her bushes and tried to attack her. The thing that I teach and that some law enforcement types really have a problem with, I teach do not make any statements whatsoever to law enforcement in the aftermath of a self-defense encounter until you've had the benefit of discussing the situation with an attorney.
Repeat that one more time. That's right. I think that's very important.
In the aftermath of a self-defense encounter, do not make any statements whatsoever to law enforcement until you've had the benefit of counsel. Do not. It's not a question of hiding something. What it's really a question of is you, in the heat of the moment, in the aftermath, not being able to explain everything correctly and to emphasize all the elements. In general, in the state of Michigan, as long as you're somewhere you have a legal right to be, you're not committing a crime, you have a reasonable and honest belief that you are facing an imminent threat of great bodily harm, sexual assault, or death, you are authorized to use lethal force to defend yourself. Now, let's say in the aftermath of one of these violent encounters, someone home invaded you or someone carjacked you. If you were to attempt to make a statement to the police, you might de-emphasize certain things. You might not tell everything. You might not be in a state of mind in which you can actually remember everything or remember a version that at least matches up with the evidence at the scene. So you need to cool down, and you need to speak with an attorney, someone who's objective and can take all the elements of that crime and phrase it in a way in such that it is a valid self-defense claim. You can't make a statement to the police one day and then remember other stuff later and then come up with an enhanced version. They're going to look at you and they're going to say, no, you're just trying to avoid certain punishments. So just for protection of your constitutionally recognized rights, your right to remain silent, your right to have counsel, your right against self-incrimination, and your right against unreasonable searches and seizures. Do not make a statement to the police until you've had an opportunity to have counsel. And, that's the primary, one of the primary things that I teach that a lot of other people don't. And, I think it's for a good reason. I would hate for some law-abiding citizen to be railroaded into a false conviction because crime in this particular community is out of control and the county prosecutors and local law enforcement have to start locking somebody up to make the point that they're actually doing something out here.
All right, I think we got a caller here for you, Rick. Let me take this call and see what we have here. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, gentlemen. My name is Salahuddin from New York City.
How you doing?
Hey,
very good. Great topic. I really appreciate you, particularly relative to the black community. We hear about black-on-black crime and such, and what is the deterrent or solution, which I think should be, of course, as you said, the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, and that's our right. But I think the problem is, and I'll keep it as brief as possible. My perception, the problem is that they're keeping the hands out of law-abiding citizens while those who commit the crimes, guns are flooding into the community. I did a little survey, in the poor white areas, like in the Appalachian Mountains. I was surprised that they had a very low crime rate. Then I assumed I have the assumption that because those people exercise their right to bear arms. But again, a lot in the black community, particularly in the inner cities, the people who are law-abiding don't have weapons to protect themselves.
And you're absolutely right, and you're making a great point. In communities in which gun control is the most severe, your crime rate is most severe. And this happens across the entire country, whether we're talking about where you're from, New York City, or we're talking about Washington, D.C., we're talking about Chicago, we're talking about Los Angeles. And in some respects, you can even say here in Detroit, we got a lot of positive things going for us with respect to the gun laws. It's just that to a large extent, the community is unaware of the changes in the law. The law is still relatively new, and nobody, from the government is breaking their neck to tell citizens what the law is. So, the onus is on us to learn what the law is, and in those places in which gun control is most severe, we need to still be active in terms of getting, these gun laws stricken down, just so the law-abiding citizens in those areas across the country have an opportunity to defend themselves. Because the only people that are armed in those communities, we're talking about Chicago and L.A. and New York, are the criminals. Or in the case of New York, in your case, they got May issue, where you have to be well connected with some individual or be on somebody's good guy list to get a carry permit, which is the ultimate slap in the face. Because really what you're saying is that the lives and safety of some people are more important than others, and I think that's a really bad message. And two, you really need to have a means for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves. Excellent point.
Well, may I ask one more question? I thank you so much for that feedback and validation. What do you think about Black Americans joining the NRA? What's your impression about that?
Well, my personal opinion is that I am a card-carrying and current member of the National Rifle Association. What I will say is that with regards to African Americans joining the NRA, there's some things that I think that would have to happen before more people, of color, African Americans, would join the National Rifle Association. By and large, it's a fact. Most African Americans are liberal. What's really interesting, though, is that, these liberal African Americans, a lot of them own guns. So there's some disconnect there between gun ownership and their political affiliation. They believe very strongly in guns and having a gun, but then the party that they belong to is very anti-gun. And then when you look at, the NRA is pro-gun, and they're going to have pro-gun candidates from the pro-gun party. And then there's some disconnect there between members of the black community and the people that are speaking, at the NRA conventions and the people that the NRA is endorsing.
They're somewhat shooting themselves in the foot, so to speak.
Well, I'm the last one to call for another organization, but maybe if there was a gun rights organization that was politically neutral and was just strictly for guns, maybe that would lead the way for more minorities, more African Americans to join. But it is what it is. The NRA is a pro-gun organization, and they're going to network with pro-gun politicians. And the best we can do is educate members of our community who the candidates are and what their positions are on firearms, so that if anything ever comes up, particularly at the national level or at the state level or at the local level, that we have a means of having somewhere to truly represent our interests and our rights regardless of our political affiliation.
Well, thank you for calling in. What was your name again, sir?
Salahuddin. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I really appreciate this forum.
All right. Thanks for calling.
God bless all of you.
Have a good day.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye.
We had someone calling in from New York. Now, they have some what I would consider pretty oppressive gun laws up there.
Oh, man, draconian.
Yeah. We watch athletes, rappers, everybody go to jail for even shooting yourself in the leg can get you, you can go to jail in New York for shooting your own self in the leg. So
yeah, you're talking about Plaxico Burress, right? Well-known story that's tough. But here's the thing, Wayne, and you got individuals who are notorious or let's call it famous or whatever who put forth a bad face on doing things inappropriate with firearms, whether we're talking about a few isolated athletes or a few isolated rap artists. They really portray a negative image of people with guns. Let's just call them what they are. These people who behave inappropriately and unlawfully with guns, they're idiots. They do not represent law-abiding citizens who have proven that they are responsible with their firearms. When you look at the stats here at the Michigan State Police website, gun owners are far and away more law-abiding than the general population. Yeah, there are some issues with a handful of individuals, but from a statistical standpoint, it's negligible. We are responsible. We can behave lawfully, morally with our guns. Let's quit treating us like children and let us be the grown folks that we are with our responsible rights and recognitions to behave responsibly with us.
Okay. Now, if people, we were talking a little bit about your class. You say you do it every other week. Do you offer?
Do it every other weekend. Go ahead.
Every other weekend. Do you offer private sessions, like if someone who's real busy or they don't want to, maybe they're embarrassed, they don't know how to use it or anything like that, can they call you and arrange for private classes? Is that something you're willing to do?
Private classes, private lessons, instructions, I'm definitely provide that. Private lesson would definitely be significantly higher because I want to make sure that I cover all the bases and that you do still get that legal information from a credible source, that is a lawyer.
Right.
Throw it out there right quick. My website is at www.detroitccw.com. My blog is at legallyarmedindetroit.com. Classes have been well received. I just rolled out a couple of new themes. I rolled out gift certificates, so while we're in this holiday season, if there's someone out there that you want to give the gift of personal protection, come on over to the websites, either DetroitCCW.com or LegallyArmedInDetroit.com. Purchase a gift certificate or this new program I rolled out called Name Your Own Price for a CCW class.
Wow.
Price can go as low as $99, but to pay the $99 class, you're going to have to make some allowances for when you can actually take the class. Obviously, the further in advance that you sign up and register, the lower you're going to pay. The sooner you want to take the class, the more you're going to pay. So I'm using time as the scarcity factor. So, yeah, come on out to the website, gift certificates, name your own price. I'm at DetroitCCW.com and LegallyArmedInDetroit.com.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, Rick, how much, what's the ratio of students have you seen from male to females? What have you seen more of over the last, say, couple of years? Do you get more female students or do you have a lot of more males?
Well, when I first started, a few years ago, 6-7 years ago, it was mostly men. You may get a situation where every now and then you may have gotten one woman in the class or two in the class. Now, it seems though women have made great strides in terms of adopting firearms and actually going to shoot and buying guns and taking this concealed pistol license class. My last class I had last Sunday. I keep my classes down in terms of size for the student-teacher interaction, but out of 10 students I had in the class, 5 were men and 5 were women. So women have definitely made great strides. They're at least half the students in my class. Maybe we still got to play catch-up in terms of overall firearms ownership, but definitely the growth area, the growth population in gun training is among women, and they represent roughly half the students in my class there.
Okay. All right. Well, give the listeners one more time that website address, and if you have a number or anything they have any, want to set up the class, give them
throw the phone number in there too.
Yes, sir.
Phone number is Rick's Firearm Academy of Detroit. I can be reached at 313-733-7404. The phone number is 313-733-7404. Those websites are DetroitCCW, altogether, .com, DetroitCCW.com, and my blog is at LegallyArmedInDetroit.com.
All right. Well, Rick, you know what? I have one more question for you because it's been kind of popping up a little bit on the national scene too, and we deal with this issue here in Michigan. Is the medical marijuana, and how does that? Do you think that that's something that should affect someone from not being able to get their license if they have this prescription for medical marijuana? Do you think that's something that should prevent someone from getting a gun license?
Here's the thing. I'm not, personally someone that indulges in that thing, marijuana. But here's the thing. If the state of Michigan, if the residents voted for something, then, okay, fine, they voted for it. There's been some discussion as to whether it was a poorly crafted law. Fine. Change it and make it to be whatever the will of the people is. if the people want, medical marijuana because they have some valid bona fide condition in which it can provide medicinal value, can ease suffering, fine. Just as long as we're clear that if you're under the influence of certain intoxicants or certain things like marijuana, you shouldn't be possessing and operating a firearm. The other thing, too, that I want to throw out there is that the actual federal government, the ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, came out with an announcement like about 2 months ago where they said that if you are using medical marijuana, regardless of what your state law is, you cannot own or possess a firearm. So at least there is some uncertainty there as to whether an individual who is licensed by the state, in this case the state of Michigan, whether that person is running afoul of federal law. So I would tell individuals, if you need to make a choice, then make a choice, either your gun or medical marijuana. If you really feel that, the feds should butt out, then you need to make a decision, at the federal level in terms of who you vote for in 2012.
All right. Well, Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always a pleasure to have you on. You're always welcome to come back on anytime. And one more time, just give them the website address. And, again, thank you for coming on the show.
All right. The web address is DetroitCCW.com and LegallyArmedInDetroit.com. That phone number is 313-733-7404. And once again, Wayne, it's always a privilege to be on the show. Now, I'm on the show, man, and I see all the big wigs and the big shots you have on, and that you allow me to grace the airwaves on your show is truly an honor, and I want to thank you for letting me talk to your listenership. Thanks a lot, Rick. You're welcome back anytime, brother. All right, brother. Thank you very much. Have a good day. That was Rick Ector on the show, people. Like I said, he's one of the premier instructors here in the Detroit area. And like I said, if you have any questions or if you want to sign up for his class, he's giving you the information to sign up. So, again, thanks, Rick, for coming on the show. Tonight we're going to have Saluddin. Thanks for calling in and coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Stay safe up there in New York. Like I said, it's really interesting to see, and that was one of the questions I'm really glad I got to ask at the end, because what you're having now is you're having people correlate your medical marijuana rights with gun ownership, and I would like to see them do that with the pain pills or anything else you might get a prescription for. How would they deal with that? But we're going to talk more about those issues moving forward the next couple of weeks. Thanks again for everyone that's listening in. The call-in number is 347-996-3175. We got a debate tonight coming on, so it'll be interesting to watch that debate. But not surprisingly, Rick told me the best gun rights activist out of all the candidates is Ron Paul. So we'll see what happens. Ron Paul is I'm predicting right now that Ron Paul will be no worse than number 2 in the Iowa caucuses coming up. It's a pretty scary thought for some people, but I predict that if he does not win the Iowa caucuses, that he will come in number 2 in that caucus. And the reason why, and I'll just explain that to you, is that he has the most passionate group of fans, followers, whatever you want to call it. Ron Paul supporters support him more than any presidential candidate I've ever seen. Pretty close, if not closer than Obama. President Obama, I think that Ron Paul people believe in his doctrine to the umpteenth degree. I've made my opinion spelled on him before. I think his American policy is excellent. It's his foreign policy that I have a problem with. So, but we'll see what happens. Again, he's always on the side of freedom and liberty, so I can't be mad at that. So him, gun right activists telling me that Ron Paul is the best guy doesn't surprise me. His American policy is sound. His foreign policy is just something that we could work on. So if you have any questions, give me a call, 347-996-3175. I want everybody to be careful out there in the holidays, like Rick was saying. Just be aware of your surroundings. Know exactly what where you're going, where you're parking. People look for the easiest person to rob, and that's why you have to show that you're aware and you know what's going on. So I hope everyone listens to that show, because Rick was really giving some great helpful tips.
make sure you know your rights. That's something else that he said. If you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. I think that was the quote of the day. If you don't know your rights, you don't have any rights. So make sure you have a good understanding of the law, because police and other people will take advantage of you if you don't know your rights. So, again, thanks for Rick Ector for coming on the show today. I think tomorrow we're gonna come back on the air tomorrow and talk a little bit about this education reform in Michigan. Hallelujah! They finally removed the caps. Something I've been really pushing for. I'm hoping to get Tom McMillan on the show. Tom's got to come back on here. We can talk about Tom. We want to talk about the education reform, and we definitely got to talk more about the emergency financial manager. Hopefully, I can get him and Brandon on here together, because it was really going down the last time we had this, this conversation on Facebook. So I'm looking forward to that. Hopefully, we'll also have Gus on tomorrow. We're going to maybe discuss the aftermath of these debates tonight. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow's show as well. If you have any questions, give me a call, 347-996-3175. We're going off the air pretty soon here today. Like I said, it was definitely a pleasure having Rick on the show, bringing more awareness to people, because I think that's the biggest issue, is people lack awareness to the issues and their rights. And I would encourage people to do more research on that. Even if you are a gun owner, right, as of now, a CCW owner, CCW licensed gun owner, you need to know your rights. And I think that's all good advice of saying, if you're ever in a situation where you have to defend yourself, do not give any statements to police until you have the presence of your attorney. It just doesn't make sense, and you put yourself in just a really bad situation if you say the wrong thing or expounds too much information to law enforcement. So I do think that's the difference. I've had my classes by law enforcement, and it probably is a little bit different from that standpoint. But I think that you have to know your rights, and that's something. The basics of anything is you don't talk until you get until you have an attorney and present with you. So that's 101. So anyway. If you have any questions, give me a call, 347-996-3175. Tomorrow we're going to talk a lot about this presidential debate and all the different candidates. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these candidates that we kind of have to pay attention to. Strangely enough, Rick Santorum has gotten no traction. I think if he can finish in second or third place in Iowa, he'll maybe pick up some traction, but he's received no, and he's the conservative of conservatives as far as I'm concerned. His record and his beliefs and what he's talking about stands the test of conservatism. But I think we're also looking for someone who can beat President Obama. So people seem to believe right now Newt is the guy. I don't know. We're going to continue to look at that. A couple of years ago, I honestly thought that we wouldn't even be coming down to this, that Mitt would be handling things, but it does not seem to be that way. It seems that a lot of the party wants anybody but Mitt. So that's where we're at right now with this 2012 campaign. We're going to have another debate tonight, and hopefully tomorrow me and Gus Pertella can talk a little bit more about it, bring a younger voice to the decision-making process, someone who's, like I said, a college Republican, and they can talk to you about exactly who they feel is the best candidate for them in their future. So looking forward to that. Give me a call, 347-996-3175, 347-996-3175. Going off the air here in about a minute, so if you're calling in, give me a call. All right. If you get a chance, go to my website, conservativeiscool.com. We've got a lot of updates on different things, video blogs, all the recent news. I keep you abreast of what's going on. I also want you, if you get a chance, to go check out something that I've really been working on. I'm going to take a little more time to talk about this down the road, is my nonprofit organization called the Urban Conservative League. And what we're going to be doing in there is we're going to try a few things. We're going to be working on bringing the private voucher program from not only to Michigan, but working across the country, trying to bring better parental school options to parents. In Detroit, essentially we are going to be working with emergency pregnancy centers and trying to help them expand and the hours of operation. The goal is, in particular, with one center down there, is to find them a building and help them operate on a full-time basis. Right now, they work out of a church, and because they're so busy, it's really inconveniencing the church. And we want to just, like I said, want to help them, put them in a situation where they can help people, citizens of Detroit, every day. And that's what we're doing. So if you get a chance, go to urbanconservativeleague.org and look at the website and see if you can help us out. See if we can do some things to really change the urban communities, because I think a lot of times as conservatives we talk about things we think would improve the plight of urban America and in particular minorities and things like that, but we have to actually get hands on. We can't just sit back at our desk and say, oh, if they just believed in this and they just did, it's going to take us actually getting out there to so people to see it, so they can touch it and know that this is real, that people are, want a better Detroit, a better urban America in general. So I hope you take the time to check out the website, urbanconservativeleague.org, and give me some feedback. I really appreciate that. If you're looking to follow me on Twitter, if you're not already following me on Twitter, it's at WBConservative on Twitter. And like I said, we're moving forward. Thank you for everyone that's listened. Thank you for the people that called in today. Thanks, Rick Ector, for coming on the show, and you're always welcome back on the show, my friend. So with that, I'm going to say have a great day, everybody, and God bless you. Talk to you later. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.